Hi, it's your Federal Phoenix. Coming back at you for my third video ever. Yay. This one is about preparing for your federal plea hearing. Now, some people go into the system looking at federal charges quite often because of an arrest or an indictment is served, or maybe they have pending state charges and the feds pick them up, and those people are currently incarcerated before their plea hearing. People like myself who get target letters or who have been arrested and are out on pre-sentence or pre-sentence release and stuff. This video is obviously things for you to do because the resources mentioned are pretty much all but non-available to an incarcerated person. So let's get started. And if I look down, it's because that's where my notes are. So got a little notebook in front of me with my notes so I don't forget anything. My federal plea hearing was sentenced for 3 days ago. I got to the capital of my state where the hearing was to be held. And got a hotel room the night before, because one thing you really want to do is make sure that you're not only early, but you're on time. And if your lawyer is anything like mine, they're going to want you to come to their office, maybe so you guys can walk to the courthouse together, go in together. And if there's anything that needs to be discussed prior, you have the privacy to do so. But so I go to the state capitol, which is an hour and a half from my home. But the vehicle I'm driving is not terribly reliable, and I did not want to risk a breakdown of the vehicle or traffic or construction. It's road construction season here, hindering me from being on time. It's so important, because if the judge calls your case number and you're not present, that could be a whole nother felony charge. It will certainly mean there will be a warrant for your arrest and you will be immediately detained. So no more preparing for prison in the free world. You're just going straight to jail before prison. And it's just not worth it, and in the event that this gives birth to a new charge for you, you could be looking at significantly more time on top of other things, missing a hearing, by missing, I mean being, 10 minutes late after the judge says, it's time to start. This could result in an issue with your points in your housing, designation, and could also impact the level of security facility you go to. So you really want to be, if you have pre-sentence release under any terms, you want to be super careful and super responsible to be on time to any and everything relevant to your legal situation, even if you're not normally a person who is on time. So anyway, so I'm down there the night before. I get a hotel room. I get dressed, which, as you guys have probably noticed, I wear a lot of t-shirts, tank tops, sweatpants. I'm real comfy casual. Obviously in federal court, you need to dress like you're there to represent someone else. Like you're a lawyer or something. It's not business casual. It is straight business, very professional attire. So you'll see me before my plea hearing in a few days. I'll post a video before I go in on what my thoughts in that moment are, and then when I come out, what my thoughts in that moment are. And you'll see me in my courtroom get up. So that'll be very different than what you've been seeing so far. So the first thing you need to do in preparation to go to your plea hearing is you need to really have a timeline that gives you a lot of wiggle room, because life happens. If you're a person with medical issues, something medical may come up. If you have transportation issues, an unreliable vehicle, or you're depending on mass transit, you really, 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 and even if you have the most reliable vehicle on the planet, you don't know if someone's going to T-bone you running a red light. I mean, you really have to make sure that you are within walking vicinity of that courthouse, at least an hour prior to your hearing. So no matter what inevitable things may come up, you are 100% going to be there, unless you're not breathing. And in which case, I think, prison will be not really a concern anymore, hopefully. So the first thing I want to mention was be early, just really, if you live more than an hour and a half, 2 hours away from where you're going to be going to court, I highly recommend, scraping up your low twos and fews and getting a hotel room locally before your hearing. Just in case anything happens. I know if it was wintertime, inclement weather would be an additional, or road conditions would be an additional concern. Thankfully, it's early summer here, so So inclement weather really isn't a concern. Road conditions are, mechanical functions of the car are, those kind of things. So definitely be prepared time wise. Another thing you want to do is you want to line up your mental and emotional support. You're going to go through a plethora, a whole lot of various emotions and thought processes because after your plea hearing, the federal probation office will prepare your official PSR. And then after that is sorted out, then comes your sentencing hearing. And for most people at that point, you're immediately detained and your incarceration journey, as far as the actual incarceration aspect of that, begins immediately. Some people, hopefully I'll be one of them, get to be a self-surrender. And then your actual incarceration will start at the specific facility you're going to. And that could be a couple weeks after your sentencing. That could be a couple months after your sentencing. That's all, to be seen. If you're immediately detained after sentencing, you will be held in county jail and state jails and kind of bounced around until your housing. I'm trying to readjust. You guys know I'm doing the selfie stick thing. I'm not even sure if I'm for it or against it. But anyhow, so ignore the fact that I struggle with that. But anyway, which is county jails and things are much more uncomfortable than your actual home institution, the actual prison you'll be going to, most likely. But the things that you're going to go through mentally and emotionally leading up to this, because if you're a person who's taken the time to educate yourself and you've seen my other 2 videos, you'll know that there's really a pretty predictable process here. The timeline is kind of, the time frames of things is predictable, but the actual specific timeline is not. So, like I thought my plea hearing would have been 3 days ago, but it wasn't. Now it's coming 4 days from now, literally 7 days after it was initially scheduled. So, but when you know that things are going to happen in a particular order, A, B, C, D, then as you scratch these things off and get these things out of the way and you go through them, you know that you are inevitably getting closer to going to prison. Your prison time is coming up on you. And, once I think A is just knowing you're going to prison. I would say B is your plea hearing. C is your sentencing, and three and D is either being detained at your plea hearing or your self-surrender date. That's the kind of the process leading up to. And C and D quite often happen at the same exact time. So after that plea hearing is out the way, after that step is out of the way, that the window of time you have to get your affairs in order, to get your dependents situated the best you can, to make arrangements for people who depend on you in any capacity. Your window of time to do those things, to vacate your home if you're a renter and get rid of all your worldly possessions if you can't afford to store them long term. All these things are happening and there's no slowing it down. And once the plea hearing's out of the way, they'll schedule a sentencing hearing. And you just know that in between these 2 hearings, the PSR will be done. Which is kind of scary because it isn't like, once the PSR is fully done, then we'll schedule your sentencing hearing. Oh, no, time waits for no one, including me or you. Sadly, sometimes. Okay, is this a better angle? I feel like this is a better angle. Okay, just because like the light from the windows in my eyes, but so anywho, so definitely mentally and emotionally you're gonna go through a whole roller coaster and gamut of things. And some things you're gonna go back over and back over and back over. I know for me, the second guessing myself, my strengths in the situation, the second guessing the sincerity of other people in my life who claim that they're going to be there, or do certain things on my behalf when I'm incarcerated or whatever. All these things, you can't help but second guess it. You can't help but go, oh my gosh. And then you start doing the math. I'm looking it up to 4 years. If I get 4 years, when I come home, my daughter will be 22. My son will be almost 9 years old. And you start doing the math on these things. How old will your parents be? Is it possible, under current circumstances, that your parents might not even be alive when you come home, which is something that I'm struggling greatly with 2 sick parents. My stepfather, my mother, it's really, really overwhelming. But then there are going to be high points where you're going to tell yourself, you know what, once I get sentenced, once I know when I'm going in, whether it be the day of sentencing or self surrender date, and I walk through those doors, my time starts. The clock is ticking, and every minute is a minute closer to going home. So you have a lot of, and you have moments where you're super grateful for the support you have. You're super grateful for what everyone has said they will or will not do. Um, so you're going to have a lot of emotional turmoil. And I've mentioned before, I've suggested people get counseling. This is obviously first time offenders, people that are really in uncharted territory. If you have friends, I would assume you have at least a couple friends, a best friend, you know, those that it's safe for you to confide in, which is a very personal thing, and I can't make that call for you. But confide in the people who you can confide in safely, and really allow yourself to feel and go through all of the things you need to feel and go through and think about. Do it now, because there's a saying that money doesn't buy happiness, but it's better to cry in a Cadillac, in a rainstorm than on a bike. And it's kind of like that in a way. It's better to go through what you need to go through mentally and emotionally and just psychologically now, while you're in the free world, while you have support, while when you're having a really rough day, you can go get yourself an ice cream, or you can wrap up in your blankets and watch, zone out to TV. If you push these things down and you avoid addressing the mental and emotional process that you're going through and the psychological process, it will inevitably bubble up on you once you're incarcerated. And then you're the person who's crying on the bicycle in the rainstorm rather than in the Cadillac in the rainstorm. Don't do that to yourself. I mean, I get the idea of wanting to really suppress mentally and emotionally and psychologically everything that's going on because it's so overwhelming. But at the same token, it's not in your best interest. So mental and emotional preparation certainly need to be at the top of your list for preparing for a plea hearing. The next thing, transportation and lodging. Don't be late. I've already mentioned that. Definitely have a plan B. Like for me, if the car were to break down at any point from my home to the city where the hearing is, I have in my head, a list of people whose phone numbers are on my phone, about 6 people that I will call. And, whether I have to pay them, just ask nicely or indignantly beg, I'm pretty confident I can get one of them to help me complete my journey to the city I need to be in. And you need to have those plans too. If for some reason the hotel that I have a room booked at, there's some kind of a water main breaks, and now, oops, you can't stay here even though you already paid for your room. Have a backup plan. I have a very close friend of 20 plus years, who has a cousin who I don't really know. In the city I'm going to, like, I know very little. But I know in a pinch, I can call her, have her call her cousin, and I'm pretty confident I could stay there if I needed to. I've made myself knowledgeable about the homeless shelters in this city. So if nothing else pans out, because you need somewhere to shower and get, and get dressed the morning of your court date, I have plans. I have backup plans, because you have to have more than one plan for how anything is going to be dealt with to protect yourself from inevitable, life's inevitable twists and turns. Okay, next, familiarize yourself with the process. Your plea hearing is pretty straightforward. You're going to go in, and the judge is going to, once everyone's accounted for, he's going to probably mention for the stenographer, the court typers person's sake, who all is present, as far as yourself and your lawyer and the prosecutor. And the judge will read off your charges. They will ask you to confirm you are, in fact, who you are. They'll read off your charges. They'll ask you if you understand your charges. They'll probably read the conditions of the plea deal. They'll say something to the effect of, you do understand that your plea deal is not guaranteed to be actually followed. You're not here under duress. No one threatened you. You signed it by your own free will. You do understand that pleading guilty, which is what you do at a plea hearing, pleading guilty is an admission that you've committed the crimes that have been alleged against you and all that kind of stuff. And you answer these very, these typical formality questions. I think if the judge finds the plea deal not acceptable, At this point, the judge will let everybody, including the prosecutor, know, like, back to the drawing board. But I think that almost never actually happens. Prosecutors generally have years of experience, as do the judges and your lawyer, public defender. And so people pretty much know what they need to do, what parameters to move in, the professionals in the situation, to just really get to the end goal, which for the most part, for the prosecutor and for your lawyer, is getting your case resolved. And by resolved, I mean just over with. And I think for the judge, it's largely executing what the judge perceives to be, within reason and a fair sentence for you, not only in light of your crime, but under your circumstances. So those things will be gone over. I think once that's done, which again, it's, very, very simple, very, very quick from what I understand. Once you answer the questions the judge will ask you, which will be simple yes or no questions. Do not try to elaborate with your answers. That will be probably looked at as you being disrespectful, and a little cocky. You don't want to come off as the person who's undermining the justice system while you're standing in front of a federal judge. Once that's done, I think the judge will say, all right, well, we're going to. Oh, and at that point, if you're, the judge will decide if you continue to be, or if you are going to be on pre-sentence release, or if you're going to be detained. And that's another thing too, is if you're someone who got a target letter or something, and you haven't actually been formally arrested by the feds at any point, or weren't arrested when the feds picked up your case, the judge at this point will determine whether or not you will stay incarcerated pending sentencing. Now, that doesn't mean pending. It doesn't mean you get to be a self-surrender for sure if you stay free pending sentencing, but he determines if you get to do that. Largely based on, if you weren't already arrested, like let's say you got a target letter, then that's all this has come about for you. But largely the feds would do, like they did with me, like a mini PSR, I guess. It was only like 6 or 7 pages, mostly demographics, some personal information. But it's my understanding that between the plea hearing and the sentencing hearing, the feds will do like an in-depth, like 15, 20-page PSR. But this little mini PSR gives the judge an idea of who you are outside of your current criminal charges. And they're really looking to determine two things. One, if you're a flight risk. If they think you're a flight risk, you're going to prison, or you're staying in, you're going to jail, or you're staying in jail. It's pretty much, Now, the second thing is, are you a threat to your community? And if the answer is just straight up no, I think it's safe to say you'll get pre-sentence release. No matter who you are, chances are that the PSR, the probation department, will find something to say that you, to some degree, are a threat to your community, even if it's just the fact that you have these pending charges. And at that point, in this mini PSR, there will be recommendations on how to mitigate, how to avoid the threat that you pose from actually becoming a viable threat. So I know that typically in this little mini PSR before the plea hearing, they will say that if you are released on a pre-sentence release, that you should have possible monitoring from the federal probation department. This can be anything from an ankle monitor in really strict terms. This can be, as loose as just someone that you call once a week or every couple of weeks and check in with. This could be drug testing. This could be, visits to your home, at this point in the game. This could be maybe, more often than not, before you travel out of state for any reason, you need permission, whether it be verbal or written, from this federal probation officer that's been assigned to you pending your sentencing, so that they know where you're at and what you're doing at all times. And that way, if you were to go on the run, God forbid, which would be incredibly stupid unless you're a millionaire with no family, no family ties that would be detrimental to sever. But so most likely I'll get pre-sentence release. I'm fairly confident because I've seen the mini PSR and I know the federal probation's recommendation is I get pre-sentence release. Also, I'm not a person with an extensive criminal history. The last time I had any trouble with the police was like 15, 20 years ago. I've, of course, never been to prison. We know that. I'm not a violent person. My crime is nonviolent. My alleged crime is nonviolent. I'm not a person with any type of, outstanding financial means. I'm not a person who has, friends all over the world that are wealthy and ready to cast a line if I were to do something stupid. It's just me. It's just little old me, dealing with a series of chronic illnesses, multiple doctor's appointments, trying to caretake for my elderly parents, one of which were recently discovered had cancer, which is, that's that emotional support part. Trust me, I'm going through it. And another one, my another step parent, who's essentially my parent, has late stage Alzheimer's. And I also have a 4-year-old son. So, aside from a lack of financial anything, and I'm not like a currently, like any type of like alcoholic or drug user or any kind of like wild card. So anyway, so most likely I'll get pre-sentence release. The chances of me not really aren't even great enough for me to make plans otherwise. Although if I were to advise myself from a very outside perspective, I would say be ready to go on that day. But I should be good. But you really need to assess for yourself what is the likelihood that you will get pre-sentence release. And if that likelihood isn't at least like 95% or better, definitely be prepared to be incarcerated that day. Now, will you be, flip a coin, but definitely don't risk a scenario where you may be incarcerated and you fail to prepare for that. Particularly when this is not going to be, you're incarcerated for a couple nights. We're talking months, years. So, another thing to prepare yourself for your federal plea hearing, prepare to have a continuance, have your coffee spill, other unforeseen things specifically right before leading up to or during the plea hearing. What if you become physically ill during your plea hearing? I mean, I can't imagine you would, because it's not a really a deciding factor on like how long you're going to be in prison or anything. But what if coffee spills? What if I go to my lawyer's office and we're getting ready to walk to the courthouse and I'm carrying a little coffee and I trip and I spill it on myself? I mean, God knows I spill things all the time. So have a backup set of clothes for that situation particularly. I'm going to definitely have a backup outfit in my trunk, because if I spill coffee on myself, I want to be able, like, I'm actually parking the car at a nearby hotel, right, less than a block from my lawyer's office, which is less than 5 blocks from the courthouse, even though the actual hotel I'll be staying at is like 7 blocks from my lawyer's office, maybe 5 from the courthouse. So the morning when I leave my hotel, I'll park at this other hotel. That way, if I do need to run and change my shirt, or if somehow I took out my driver's license for something and forgot to put it back in my wallet and it's in the car, I can go retrieve items very quickly without risking being late. Another thing you need to consider is hair and wardrobe. This coming from someone who lives in messy buns and messy ponytails and t-shirts, but it's the reality of the situation. You look very professional. Do not, if you're a woman, play up your femininity at all. I know some women think, oh, I'm so attractive, it'll persuade my judge. Or, I need to kind of play the I'm a woman card, because that will get me some kind of mercy or leniency or compassion. That would be very insulting to your judge and the court itself, and they'll probably pretty much call you out on that pretty immediately. Don't set yourself up like that. Don't try it. You need to have no cleavage showing, none, not a piece. If you're wearing a skirt, it needs to be knee length, ideally, like a pencil skirt and a skirt. Basically, you need to look like you're a lawyer when you go into this hearing to show respect to the judge, to show respect to the court, and to show the court that, especially a person like myself who is the opposite of dressed, in a professional manner, to really illustrate to the courts that you're going to do what you need to do to comply with whatever they tell you. You're not trying to be difficult. You just want to get through this process and get home. And if that means that you got to wear some tight shoes and, and spend a few dollars, at Walmart or thrift stores getting, business attire, do that. Just do it. Don't try to fight it. Do not wear jeans. Do not wear patterns. You may think, oh, I have this lovely floral blouse. I could wear these slacks I have and maybe pull off this real cutesy pantsuit. Don't do it. Don't. If you wear pants like a pantsuit, do not do like the fitted to the ankle look, because that kind of puts everyone in the mind frame that you have on leggings or jeggings possibly, which would be inappropriate. You need to have normal, I'm not saying, bell bottoms obviously, but, like normal, just straight leg, little they shouldn't be able to tell the shape of your ankles unless your ankles are actually exposed because you have on a skirt. And if you have on a skirt, wear some kind of pantyhose or tights underneath it. That actually your skin needs to be covered. The only skin that shouldn't be covered is from the neck up. You know, I have chest tattoos, so, you know, I'll be making sure all of that is covered as well. If you have any facial piercings, take those out. You know, one small, modest earring is in each ear is fine. You know, no gaudy jewelry, nothing flashy. You know, federal crimes often involve some level of finance. Whether you're accused of being a white collar criminal, whether it's drug related, chances are there's a pretty major financial aspect, if not for you, from some other person or persons, you know, connected to your case. You do not want to disrespect the courts by going in wearing, you know, 10 pounds of jewelry, which just screams, I have more money than I even know what to do with. Because chances are your criminal charges have something to do with money. And you do not want to appear. Now, if you're a person with a lot of means and you want to wear your nice pearls, maybe some nice little pearl earrings, nothing over the top, nothing gaudy or tacky, that's okay. You know, that's okay. I'm going to have on like a $3 costume jewelry necklace, you know, that's not really over the top, and these little tiny earrings, and that's it. I have a tattoo on my hand from years ago. Really, really interesting story behind that. It's a nice memory. But anyway, I'll probably cover that with makeup. Because again, you do not want to appear as though you're a person who in any way, shape, or form is not fully adhering or accepting or acknowledging the seriousness of the situation. And by appearing in any way casual, you could do that. Also, you don't know, unless you know your judge personally, in which there's other issues here, but you don't know if your judge is someone who likes tattoos, doesn't mind them. You don't know if your judge is someone who thinks they're horrible and, you know, they're just for you know, people that, you know, don't intend to do anything productive with their lives. Why risk any aspect of your release or your treatment or your image to the judge just so you can show off your tattoos? I mean, really, let's not even go there, right? So something is on this mirror. I'm noticing, what in the world? Oh, those are thumbtacks. You see the little two dots behind me? I thought, what in the world is that? Like, I know there are no bugs in my house. Cats, yes. Bugs, no. And I thought maybe there's something on the camera thingy. No. It's two thumbtacks that used to hold up a picture frame. Because, of course, part of this process is limiting my worldly possessions, for me, limiting my worldly possessions to very, very, very scarce, minimal nothing. Because I have limited space at a relative's home to store a few things. And other than that, everything has to be sold or donated or thrown away. And so all my pictures, my house used to be covered with pictures on the walls, have all been taken down, taken out of the frames, because frames are bulkier than pictures. And the frames will probably be donated or given away. And the pictures are in a box with some other sentimental things. So that's what that was. Sorry. Anywho, let's not go down that rabbit hole, shall we? And then the last thing that I put for preparing for your federal prison, of course, your federal plea hearing. Oh, prison. Here I come. But is definitely make sure your phone is fully charged and turn it off. Not on silent, off when you go in that courthouse. Because any chance under the sun that your phone is going to vibrate or, God forbid, play your ringtone, you know, that would really be a big oopsie when you cannot afford in federal court. But also, you know, like for me, and, you know, I'll be heading to the capital city in a few days, to the hotel room I'll be in the night before. The day of that I'm heading to this city, I actually have, either for myself or one of my loved ones I help care for, several appointments. There'll be a lot of running around that day. And then when all that's done, instead of coming home and unwinding, I'll get on the highway and head to the Capitol. I intend to, probably the night before, maybe the morning before my plea hearing, make another video of just, you know, like my thoughts before my plea hearing. And then I think when I come out and I have a minute to kind of collect myself, I would assume my lawyer would want to talk to me briefly afterwards and stuff. But once I've had time to kind of collect my thoughts and just take everything in, I'll make an afterthoughts, thoughts, my thoughts after my plea hearing video. And, there may be some things that I'm unaware of right now that are going to, come out of left field that I got to navigate through, the plea hearing. And you'll find that out shortly after I do. So hopefully any difficulties that I've been unable to foresee that arise, you can foresee. I really hope that these videos allow people who are in my position to have some comfort and some support and some guidance, and just, reduce their overall anxiety and frustration and fear in this process. And also, for maybe you're studying criminology, maybe you have loved ones that have been through this process, and or maybe you're just generally curious. I really hope that these very raw, kind of uncensored, unscripted videos, really give insight to what a person goes through this process. Now, and you may notice that I'm kind of steering away from much personal information. I'm certainly not, mentioning many details about my case. That would be foolish. And I'm not giving a whole lot of advice or a whole lot of perspective as far as the personal difficulties, like family and financial and things of that, in specific detail that I or my loved ones have went throughout this process. Because you have to think the incident that led to these charges in September, which is 3 months from now, will be 2 years old. And, and I've went through, being indicted by this, or not indicted, I'm sorry, being charged by the state, being on bond for a year and a half, finally getting off bond because the state dropped their charges, which was one of the happiest days I've had in a very long time. And then a month or two later, getting a target letter from the feds saying, it ain't over, sweetheart, you're still going to prison. So it's been a real roller coaster, and, and it's been very public. When the incident happened, it was all over the news locally, a lot of chatter about it, people I'd never even heard of. The vast majority of people had anything negative to say about me, or people I'd never even heard of at all. Thankfully, the few people who actually know me, were defensive, and I love and appreciate that, and I would do the same for them. But, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, but I don't get into mine too much. One, because I really am a private person, believe it or not. And two, the situations I may be going with my children or my community or my neighbors as a result of all this don't apply to you. And you don't need to prepare for my personal issues, just my prison issues. Most likely, if you're seeing this, you need to prepare for my same kind of prison scenario. So, I want to share information that's helpful, but not, I want to be transparent and honest, but I don't want to be transparent to a fault. I don't wish to handicap myself, or God forbid, anyone I may mention as far as, my personal life, my loved ones, any more than we've already been handicapped by all of this. So anywho, so that is my video on preparing for your federal plea hearing. Those are my tips. That's what I'm doing. Remember, no loud jewelry. Don't wear any patterns. Don't wear bright colors. And don't wear all black. You're not going to a funeral. It may feel like you're going to a death of something, of a piece of your life. And that's normal. But don't dress like you're going to a funeral.